dialed into the right place, baby?
You dialed right to the right place.
You're watching my boy G. Hensley, the best 49ers YouTube out there. You better not go nowhere, you dig?
And now your host, Ryan Hensley.
Ryan Hensley.
What's going on, man? Look at this guy, Rohan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. I'm excited to be back and appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. If I knew you were wearing a nice white shirt, I probably would have made your name black, so it would have shown up better. But this is Rohan Chakravarthi. You guys know who he is. He's half human, half robot. He knows everything about everything. Smartest guy on YouTube. So glad to have you here, man.
I mean, it's a fun Friday. I'm luckily out here at the Combine in Indianapolis, and I'm excited to talk. I mean, there's a lot going on. You know, the 49ers, obviously, you're hearing about views, who they're doing with prospects, all the Combine talks going on. And then, of course, free agency's coming up just, around the corner.
Yeah, and we got a lot to talk about. Rohan is coming to us live from the scouting combine. So he's been there. He's interviewing players. He's checking everything out. So he's got a lot of input on that. So we're going to talk to him about that stuff. We're also going to get some cap information. I think it's important for people to really understand the cap. I'm not a cap expert. I understand a lot of it, but I don't consider myself a cap expert. Guys like Rohan, there are a lot of guys that are really good at it. And so I feel like it's good for the viewers because I know a lot of viewers, whether you want to admit it or not, you may not understand everything about the cap. So I'm going to have Rohan break it down to us like we're kindergartners. If we never heard of the cap, Rohan's going to break it down. And if you're not a cap expert, you are going to be by the end of the show. That much I can promise you. So Dave Barclay says, Ryan and Rohan, love it. Thanks, you guys. Thank you for being here, man. Thank you for the support and the super chat. Appreciate it. Shout out to Reg Cell. Tomorrow's her 9-year work anniversary. Congratulations. I appreciate all you guys being here. So here's what we're going to do, Rohan. I want to get into like the scouting combine and dig into your brain with all of that stuff because that's where you're at right now, and that's a lot of valuable information, and a lot of that is on our minds heavily right now. But I wanted to get into the salary cap first because I think a lot of people don't understand it as much as they think they do. So I wanted to get your help kind of clarifying it. Let's start off with this. Explain the salary cap, what it is, what the number is, all of that, like we're 5 years old, like we're in kindergarten. Explain to it, what is the salary cap?
Yeah, I mean, there are, like, when it comes to the salary cap, there's a lot of different numbers people are going to throw because salary cap, when you think of it, you're just thinking, oh, it's the amount of money that the team is spending. No, actually, it's related to the cap hits that every team has for every specific player. It's the cumulative amount of money spent on those cap hits, which isn't always related to the amount of money in general that the team is spending. This upcoming year, the 49ers are right now probably just around even with the salary cap, despite, having a lot of money freed up at the end of last year and a little bit money freed up earlier today. You have a lot of different avenues where they've tried to create cap space, but ultimately right now they're just around, just around even. But as for the salary cap itself, it's just, the way the NFL works, it's the way that you try and create a cap in terms of the amount that you can spend so you don't create super teams and things like that. And every team has to be cap compliant by the new league year, which starts right at free agency on March 16th, I believe, this year.
And the salary cap this year, for people that don't know, is what, 255?
Yeah, it was a little higher than anticipated. It's around 255 million. So I mean, that's around, I think, a 30 million increase. It was a pretty historic increase this past year.
Okay, and as of right now, where do the Niners sit in regards to the salary cap?
I believe the Niners are just barely over, maybe like a couple 100,000 over. They have a lot of money that they've tied up to this current roster. I think they're spending upwards of $285 million, closer to the $290 million range. The reason, though, that they are, they're spending $290 million, but the cap is only $255. The reason that the Niners are close to the cap right now is because they actually carried over $38 million last year. remember the restructures back in training camp. They had 3 or 4 restructures. Guys like Fred Warner, Christian McCaffrey, Charvarius Ward. I forget the fourth guy, but I believe there was a fourth restructure as well. That helped free up $38 million cap. The Niners were able to carry that $38 million over to this offseason. They did that because they knew they were going to need some more money this offseason. So they carried the $38 million over, and that now gets added to the amount of money that they can spend or they can use this offseason. Still, though, with the $38 million, they're pretty much even around the cap, which is a little scary.
Yeah, and it sounds like they're, and I want to talk to you more about restructures in a second, but I looked something up. So 16% or 9 players on the 53-man roster cost 72% of the salary cap as of right now. That's Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, George Kittle, Charvarius Ward, Javon Hargrave, Nick Bosa, and CMC make up for $183.7 million of the $255 million salary cap. So they're very top heavy. I haven't done enough research and looked at other teams to see where they compare, but it does seem like it's very top heavy right now. I would imagine a lot of teams, though, their quarterback is in that number. And since Brock Purdy has a very low salary, they're allowed to do this stuff right now. But at some point, they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy, and that's going to change some things up. Before we move forward, though, explain exactly what dead cap is. I don't think a lot of people know what dead cap is. Can you explain what is dead cap, and does that count against the $255 million?
Yeah, so dead cap is another aspect that the Niners kind of have to deal with overall. And dead cap is, so every contract comes with a certain portion of guaranteed money. Unlike the NBA, the contracts aren't fully guaranteed in the NFL. There's only a certain portion of the contract that's guaranteed. However, if you elect to move off of a player before that contract is done and there is still guaranteed money remaining on that contract, that money ends up becoming dead money. For example, the 49ers chose to trade Trey Lance last offseason. He had a fully guaranteed deal, which means that the Niners, they don't pick up the salary, but they pick up the entire signing bonus that Trey Lance was paid, which means that they now have a dead cap hit of $5.5 million covering Trey Lance this offseason, even though he's not on the team. Another way that dead cap works is void years, something the Niners like to use, essentially to spread out the signing bonus to cover more years, so you're not spending as much that specific season or the next specific season. For example, let's say you have a 3-year deal worth $10 million, with a $10 million bonus. Rather than having a signing bonus of $3 million per year, it's going to just be $2 million, and then you can cover it over 5 years. So you're spending less, but then you have voids where the isn't under contract, but they're owing. That money also becomes dead cap, and so you kind of have to deal with that, where you're essentially on the hook for a player who isn't on your roster there.
And does dead cap? So the I think it's $5.5 million for Trey Lance. He's the highest dead cap hit as of right now on the 49ers roster. Second is Isaiah Oliver, 1.14, I believe, million. So does that does the dead cap go against that $255 million cap?
It does, yeah. So the Niners do also account for that. So when you talk about the $255 million, in reality, it's only, I believe they have around 9 to 10 million in dead cap. So it's around only 245 to 246 million kind of, that is dead cap. Again, they've done a lot of different things where they're spending a lot more money than the 255 million because of the carryover that they were able to acquire. But yes, their total spendings get lowered by $10 million because they have to account for $10 million in dead cap over the, I think it's 4 or 5 players that are in ultimately having dead cap this offseason.
Yeah, it's funny. The smallest dead cap hit is Isaiah Winstead. $667 in dead cap for Isaiah Winstead. So not really breaking the bank too much. All right, so here's a question then. What the 49ers will usually do, what I imagine they're going to do in order to help with the salary cap is a restructure. Explain how a contract restructure affects the salary cap this year and years moving forward?
Yeah, so I mean, majority of the 49ers players, those extensions that they've given out, they're big money extensions. And like I said, a portion of the contract is guaranteed, and a portion of that guaranteed money comes via a signing bonus. However, that doesn't cover a majority of the contract. A majority of the contract comes via your base salary. And so what the 49ers could do is they can take that base salary, for example, for a player like, let's say, Trent Williams. Trent Williams has a cap hit of 31 million this year, but 20 million of the 31 million is via his base salary. A restructure is when they take that base salary and essentially convert the base salary into some form of a bonus, a signing bonus, an option bonus, or some other bonus that you can split over the course of a couple of years. That way, your base salary might get lowered from 20 million to 1 million. You now have freed up 19 million in cap, and you can use that as a signing bonus. And the good part about a signing bonus is you can spread it throughout the entirety of the contract. So if Williams had 5 years on his deal, you could take that 19 million and you could divide it by 5, and that's the amount of money you owe him for those 5 years. So instead of maybe paying 20 million, you might only pay him 5 million this season, 5 the next, 5 the year after, 5 the year after. So a contract restructure helps free up cap space because you're converting the money and pulling the money in later years. The one negative, obviously, of a contract restructure is you're now adding whatever you're saving. You're now adding that to the future years, where usually a lot of the contracts are backloaded, so they're already going, up in price, and now you're adding additional money to those years with a contract structure.
Yeah, and a lot of the times when they do that, they end up paying guys even after they retire. Who was a good example? D Ford, a great example of that. Yeah, so they got to be careful who they do that with, and you really don't want to do that. You want to do that as unoften as possible, right? You don't want to do that unless you really have to, especially with an older player, because then you're paying for guys that aren't even playing football for you. So here's my question for you. When you look at this salary cap, it's really like Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, Eric Armstead. Those are the big three that are hurting the 49ers this year. How do you think they approach restructuring and trying to free up money this year? How do you see that playing out?
I think this is honestly the toughest year the 49ers are going to have to deal with when it comes to that, because as we talk about, I mean, you mentioned, I believe, the top 9 players accounting for like 72% of the total cap. Well, 7 of the 9 players, the reason that they're so high is because they've been restructured at least once. Williams has gotten a restructure, Deebo's gotten a restructure, Armstead's gotten one, Warner, Kittle, Trevor Ward, and McCaffrey. 7 of those 9 players have gotten a restructure, which is now, while it alleviated the cap from last year, has now increased their cap hits this year. You're talking about the big 3, though, specifically. Trent Williams. The number one issue, if you're trying to restructure Trent Williams and push money into the future, is impending retirement. Williams has said he wants to play 1 to 2 more years, but you ultimately don't know whether he'd retire after next offseason. And so are you willing to take the risk? Because if a player retires, it all turns to dead cap. It's not like his contract becomes void. It immediately goes to dead cap. And so if Williams retires, the 49ers are left with a bevy of dead cap. If you look at his cap hits for the next few years, it's 31 million this year, 34 million the next year, and 37 million the year after that. The year after that, you can get out of pretty easily. But if you potentially move 10 million of his money into 5 million this year, 5 million next year, that's an additional 5 million to be on the books for should he retire. And so that's where it becomes complicated. Guys like Eric Armstead and Deebo Samuel, well, the 49ers right now are in a contract negotiation with Brandon Ayuk. It's going to be unfeasible to pay 2 receivers. And so if you choose to extend Brandon Ayuk, you're likely wanting to move off of Deebo Samuel when it becomes feasible. If you restructure him, that date when it becomes feasible turns later and later. And so it might be even more difficult to move off of him, and you're with 2 top-tier receiver contracts on the books. As for Armstead has a $28 million cap hit this year, but it's the final year of his deal. On top of that, because they've restructured him already twice, he has $15 million in dead money next year on a year where he is not even under contract. Next year is a void year for the 49ers, and they're already paying $15 million in dead cap for Ark Armstead. If you restructure him again, you're going to have to pay even more dead cap, which is why, to me, I think the likeliest option is extending Ark Armstead. I don't know if 49er fans would like that because he's already entering his age 31 season. He's been injury prone. But I think the only realistic option they have in order to cut down his cap hit this year and also make sure they're not screwed in 2020, in 2025 is to extend them.
And here's the thing for me. So, there's a lot of people have come out. I think Tim Kawakami, Silver has come out talking about how the 49ers are going to make some big moves this year, basically going younger. And that means they're going to do something with one of these players. In my head, I'm looking at things and I'm trying to figure out what that means necessarily. One scenario that I'm looking at, and maybe you can explain this to people too, the post-June 1st, pre-June 1st trade situation. For instance, if you trade Deebo Samuel pre-June 1st, there's a $21 million dead cap, and you'll save 6.9 in cap savings versus post-June 1st, if you were to trade Deebo Samuel, it's a 6.6 million dead money, 22 million cap savings. What does that mean as far as actual numbers? Like if they were to trade, you're not going to do it pre-June 1st. But let's say hypothetically, they decide they're going to move on from Deebo Samuel to save some money post-June 1st. It'll be a 6.6 million dead cap, $22 million cap savings. But what does that actually mean for this year and years to come if they were to do that?
Yeah. So the way that a post-June 1st move works is essentially the reason that teams value these post-June 1st moves is because that dead cap hit now gets allocated over 2 years. So whereas he would have $22 million dead cap hit or something like that, should he be traded pre-June 1st, that gets nearly halved. You're only paying $6 million in dead cap because it's $6 million there, $6 million the year after, and then the void year that he has, it's $6 million. So you're adding essentially, it's like a signing bonus. It's like the same impact as a signing bonus. You're allocating the dead cap over the remaining years of the contract. Now you'd have to pay, some big dead cap then for Deebo Samuel in the next few years. You're going to have to pay $6 million over the next, I believe, 3 years. Then, if that's the case, but that's a way for you to create savings. The one thing I will say about a trade for Deebo Samuel is it's somewhat unrealistic, or not unrealistic, but unlikely that a team would be willing to trade for a receiver after June 1st. The reason being, usually teams understand their needs, go into free agency to attack those needs, and then address the remainder of their needs in the draft. Most teams usually feel pretty good about their receiver situation post June 1st, that they don't look to address the receiver position via a trade. Situations could pop up, but that's why to me it feels unlikely, because Deebo Samuel cannot report to his next team before June 1st if they do a post June 1st trade. Even if trades agreed to in March, he can't report. And then whoever the 49ers get back, which is likely going to be draft capital, cannot report before June 1st, which means that if you're likely to move off of Deebo Samuel, whatever you get in return would probably not help you this year.
Interesting. So how do the 49ers, if you're John Lynch, how do you free up cap room this year? What is your go-to plan? What would you do?
So again, I mean, it really depends on what 49ers want. Do you want to go all in 2024? Because there's a choice to go all in 2024, understanding that in the upcoming years, you're going to probably struggle a little bit with your cap situation and let go of players that have been key pieces to your organization for ultimately nothing. That's an option for the 49ers, and that could mean restructuring guys like Fred Warner, extending guys like Ark Armstead, maybe restructuring either Trent Williams or Deebo Samuel. That would ultimately free up a significant amount of cap space. The question, though, is how much of a balancing act are they going to do? Because you're going to need to balance this year with the cap hit, or the cap for the next few years, which is also, a problem in a sense for the 49ers. To me, I think the number one thing that the Niners need to do this year, and it's somewhat related to the cap, but also not, it's hit on your draft picks. San
Yeah.
Francisco in the last two off seasons have really struggled to consistently hit on their draft picks. That has led to you relying on older players to have, more snaps. If the 49ers have replacements for those guys, you're not necessarily as tied to the older players. You're able to move off of them without feeling as big of a ramification. And I think that helps them. They haven't done so in the last 2 years. As a result, they possess one of the older rosters in the NFL.
Yeah, I think this draft probably is the most important that the 49ers have had so far. Think that way. As far as long-term competitiveness and avoiding some real down years. One guy that just doesn't make sense at all is Kyle Juszczyk has $7.5 million. Now, I don't think they're going to cut Kyle Juszczyk. I would be very surprised, but they might ask him to take a pay cut or something like that. What do you think they're going to do with a fullback making $7.5 million who's beloved in the locker room and is kind of a staple on this roster? What do you think they do with Kyle Juszczyk?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. When the 49ers initially gave out that pretty big deal to Kyle Juszczyk, 5-year, $27 million deal, they kind of did him a favor. They guaranteed me in his third year of that contract, something they usually don't do, essentially kind of keeping him through San Francisco through 3 years at least. And then you'd have to make a decision on what you wanted to do. Well, the third year was 2023. You're now in the fourth year of the deal, and Kyle Juszczyk, it just seems unfeasible for him to be on the team on his current contract. Now, do I expect the 49ers to cut him? I don't think so. The reason being, one, he has a $2.9 million dead cap hit should the 49ers cut him, and you could look to save that money by reworking Kyle Juszczyk's contract and coming up with an extension or some different type of arrangement where you keep Kyle Juszczyk on the team. Because, like you said, Juszczyk's a guy who's beloved in the locker room. He's a guy who also fits for the 49ers, so it makes sense from a team perspective. But from a player's perspective, the fullback position has deteriorated a little bit over the last 5 years. You don't really see guys like Kyle Juszczyk, being valued by others as much. In fact, the 49ers, when you see Kyle Juszczyk's usage, has decreased in each of the last 3 years, which is another thing to kind of show how the NFL is evolving. I think Juszczyk can understand that. He's also gotten paid well. I would expect him to take a pay cut and remain with the 49ers under a rework.
Agreed. So I have a little free agent fantasy, so to speak, by the name of Danielle Hunter. They're estimating he's worth about 3 years, $60 million, $20 million per year. Is there any way possible my dream of Danielle Hunter joining the 49ers happens?
I think there is a possibility. Now, I don't know if Danielle Hunter's going to fetch a 3-year deal coming. I believe he's like at age 31, age 32 season. Or no, actually, I'm wrong. He's age 29, but I don't know what kind of deal Danielle Hunter's going to fetch. It might be those bigger 1-year type of deals, 2-year type of deals, a short-term extension, potentially get him on the market one more time before he ultimately catches out. But the one thing about, going with Danielle Hunter, that symbolizes you're going all in this year. And it also comes with an understanding that you're going to face some cap struggles in the next 2 years. Because, like I said, the 49ers need to extend guys like Brandon Knight. You need to figure out a way for extension for Brock Purdy in a few seasons. You have to maneuver around certain portions of your roster. So I do want to say this. It is possible. Ultimately, it is possible because the Niners have different avenues that they can create money. I do believe that's true. I think that if they want to go for a splash, the opportunity is absolutely there. It's just how much are you willing to sacrifice your future for the risk of going for a Super Bowl in 2024? Because if you ultimately miss out, I think your window is gone after this offseason.
For me, like this is, I'm not sold on my idea right now, but in my head, I'm thinking, try to figure out a way to trade Deebo Samuel post June 1st, sign Danielle Hunter, and then you could focus this draft on the offensive line. I feel like if you sign Danielle Hunter opposite of Nick Bosa, then you can really focus in on the offensive line and build that line for the future with Brock Purdy. That's kind of where I'm sitting right now, but I don't know how realistic any of that is or if it'll happen. I want to get your take on what position will the 49ers draft first. I asked this question on Twitter, and 59% of the people that voted, 49ers fans, think they're going to go with an offensive line first. I'm not so confident in that. I felt that way. I think probably 80% would have said that was going to be the case last year, and it was not.
Yeah.
What position do you think the 49ers are going to draft first?
I think this is a good question, and I do think that you have a good reason to not be fully confident in that. To me, Ryan, I think this is, you said your pipe dreams to Neil Hunter. What I kind of personally hope 49ers do is the opposite of what you said, in that I think that there is a significant amount of value in free agency this offseason for offensive line. Normally, I'm a staunch opponent of paying offensive linemen in free agency. I believe they usually come at a premium. I don't believe they usually hold up to what their contract stipulates. And I mean, we've seen that literally this past offseason with contracts like Mike McGlinchey's, Jawan Taylor's, the top tackle contracts. But I do think specifically on the interior offensive line, there is a good amount of value at center and a good amount of value at guard. I'll probably put out an article sooner than later. I think I compiled a list of like 20 names that I believe could start for the 49ers at either position. And I think that there's value in free agency where if you're willing to spend mid-tier level money, you can get talent that is an upgrade and that could be startable, allowing you to focus on other needs. The reason that I'd prefer that is because I think the 49ers need to go best player available in a draft class as deep as this in terms of starting level talent in the first two rounds. I think it's not necessarily as top heavy, but I think there's a lot of good starting level talent first two rounds of this class. And so the Niners, instead of reaching on a position, I prefer they'd go best player available. Now, to answer your question, what position do I think they'll draft? I've kind of, you get to the sense of what type of players they're looking at in the interviews and things like that. Seems they're interested in defensive linemen. I think that could be a potential possibility, although it seems the top edge rushers would be the board by the time the Niners selected 31. Cornerbacks, the guy who really intrigues me is Cool Chemistry. I just did my NFL kind of my cornerback research. I have McKinstry as my cornerback one in the class. I did a scouting report on the top 5 corners in the class. McKinstry is the guy who I believe is the top guy. He recently had a foot injury that slide him. Yeah, go ahead.
Before we continue, let's just call him Kool-Aid. I think it's a better name than McKinstry.
I mean, yeah, the Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid from now on. All right, let's do that.
I think Kool-Aid though could be a potential option at 31. I think he's a slam if you take him at 31. But offensive line, the reason I think there's buzz is because I believe there's 9 to 11 first round grade type players at offensive line in this class. I think there's a significant amount of talent to the point where if you're looking at 31, the best player available might actually be an offensive lineman. The question for me, though, is do I trust the 49ers to be able to develop the offensive lineman in order for him to be ready to start and be a meaningful contributor in year one? Because if they're not, then I don't know how valuable that pick is if you're trying to go all in 2024. That's the thought process, and that's the main hesitation for me with offensive linemen, even though I believe there's a good chance that would be a pick and he might be the best player available at the spot.
Yeah, man, I'm intrigued by this draft for a number of reasons. Kool-Aid, man, he's so good, and you got him as your number 1 corner. Do you really think he's going to be there at 31? Don't you think someone will snatch him up?
So from what I can tell, I mean, number one, injury report came out today. He suffered I think it was a broken foot. It came out in his medicals at the combine. He will not run at the combine. He will test at his pro day. So I'm assuming he's just going to be totally fine by the time, the offseason program comes. But medicals is a thing that could let him slide. And the other thing that we've heard is character concerns. A lot of the other quarterbacks, it seems like they don't have character concerns. That was the one thing that I think people kind of do drag on Kool-Aid a little bit. And so, I mean, personally, I don't view it as a concern. I think the Niners have kind of shown that they have strong character within their building. I think the player is he'll be the top corner in this class, in my opinion. This type of system, I think he's a guy who's the most scheme independent guy in the draft in terms of, I think he plays well pressing corners, pressing players. I think he plays well, playing press Baylor. You're up, but you might be as physical at the line of scrimmage. And I think he plays well in off coverage. I think he's a good corner overall. So There are some reasons. Personally, still, I believe he'll be taken in the top 25. But should he fall, I think he would definitely be worth a consideration at 31. Just seems like the Niners are doing their research there.
Yeah, and then here's another name. I can't believe I forget the guy's name. I think it was Mel Kiper that had us
Mhm.
getting Chop, and I don't see how Chop falling to 31 at all. I'm surprised he
No.
had him going to us. What did you see from Chop yesterday? That was ridiculous. 4.48 official 40 time.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
He's the winner. I mean, he is the clear winner of the combine. He probably got himself a couple of $1 million. Just congrats to that, to him. I mean, he was expected to run well, but people who were doubting, was he going to crack the fours? He did it. I mean, he's an intriguing guy because he's raw as a prospect, but you can't teach that type of athleticism. It seemed even before the combine that he was probably projected to go within the top 25. I'd expect that to be the case. I think, though, one thing the Niners could consider, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it. Like, we're talking about the talented players in this class, potentially going in that 20 to 25 range. The Niners have extra picks. They've got 11 picks. Potential trade up. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, just as long as they're not sacrificing future picks. If it's picks this year, that's fine, especially if it's later
Yeah.
rounds. But I don't think they can afford to like trade early draft picks. They need as many early draft picks. I think, anything after round 4, I'm okay with it, using that to move up. That's fine. Like round 5, round 6 stuff. If you're going to use that to move up a couple slots, I understand that. I get that, and I welcome it because you're not going to really have positions available for 11 people to make this roster. Anyways, I think last year they had 11 or 12, and they ended up with 9. They ended up only drafting 9.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So similar situation. What do you think about Braden Fisk, and how would he fit with the 49ers? He showed out as well. That guy can move for how big he is. What do you think about Braden Fisk yesterday?
He was a talented player. I had scouted a little bit prior to the draft, a guy who I thought the Niners would definitely target should he be there in round 3. Seems like he's a round 2 guy. I think he had a good Senior Bowl. I think he had a really good combine. He was a guy that really stood out, and I think he now might directly fall in that round 2 range. Wouldn't be surprised if there's conversations that the Niners could get him at 63.
But you
But
don't
D
think
tackle, I mean, that's like that's a premium. You'd expect him to get some good buzz going ahead.
Yeah, for me, it seems like the 49ers, what they're going to do, and probably what they do every year, is they're going to prioritize certain positions, right? Like, I'm sure they have D-line, offensive line, linebacker, DB. Those are probably their focuses, maybe tied in after that. And they're going to take the best player available within those, according to those priorities. It seems like that's what's going to happen this year with the 49ers. A lot of people think it's going to be O-line. But here's the thing, too, is I think fans don't understand that necessarily how much John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan value the guys that they already have on this roster: Jake Brendel, Burford, Feliciano, and McKivitz. I think the 49ers look at them as serviceable players in their offense, even though us as fans, we might want to see upgrades there. When they have holes on their defensive line, it's more attractive to them to fill those holes than it is to replace guys that are already starting for the 49ers. So I think a lot of us want them to draft offensive line. I know I do, particularly at tackle. I think they can make do with Brendel at center. I think they can make do with the Feliciano Burford at guard. But it's that right tackle, the bookend, that really, to me, if you improve that, would really change this offense. And I'm hoping they go after a really good guy there. But I don't think the 49ers necessarily look at it like that. Do you agree?
I do agree. Personally, I don't want them to just isolate a certain position and go and look into targeting that position, because especially with you drafting at 31, you don't know how the 30 picks are going to go. You can't really just bookend yourself on one position, and then when that isn't available, you then pivot or you reach or do something like that. But as I said earlier, I do think that there's going to be a first round caliber tackle available at 31. The 49ers could trade up, get a guy who might better fit their system or something like that. I think tackle is a possibility. For me, though, the question is always going to be, can they develop the tackle? Because they've struggled with a little bit of development recently. They've also struggled with evaluation. It's not only a development thing, it's they've picked the right players for their system. And maybe it's them prioritizing the system too much. But regardless, that process, it seems like, has to change a little bit. And you hope so when it does, because there's a golden opportunity to improve at the position in this draft.
Yeah, and I hope they do, man. Another position where they could save a little bit of money is, compared to last year, was the backup quarterback position with Sam Darnold. They paid him a lot of money. They're paying Trey Lance $5.5 million this year. So they need to get cheaper there. How do you think they approach the backup quarterback position? Do you think they draft a guy, restricted free agent, a free agent? I took a poll. I should find it actually, but I asked, here it is. Which 49er backup quarterback will return next year? And the choices are Sam Darnold, Brandon Allen, both or neither. A majority of 49ers fans, 48.1%, said neither. Second place said Brandon Allen. Only 8% think Sam Darnold's coming back. Only 2% said both. How do you think it's going to play out?
I think that they're doing their due diligence on the draft. Got to talk with a few players. A lot of them, people met, at the Senior Bowl. But a guy who I think is intriguing, could be a middle round guy, is Michael Pratt. He said he had an expo with the 49ers. I don't think he ultimately ends up in San Francisco. I think he'll go earlier than the 49ers want to spend at that. But you could go for a young guy, to try and find out a cheaper solution. Brandon Allen's also, a candidate who's been in the building, who's been the backup. If you want to go cheaper, I think the options are there. I think, like you said, I think there's just too much discourse about the backup quarterback. I honestly think if it at all goes to any backup, you're rude. So I don't think that there should be too much weight or money put into that position.
Yeah, I think so too. It's not like the thing is, people were like, well, you need a backup quarterback if something happens. And, traditionally the 49ers have had a lot of injuries at quarterback. And if Brock goes down, you need that backup quarterback. But my take is, if Sam Darnold's your quarterback, you're not winning the Super Bowl anyways. I just don't believe that would have happened.
I agree. I think if it's any backup, you're not going to win the Super Bowl. And so I understand the Darnold part, just because you didn't know, you had uncertainty with Brock Purdy's health last year. And so that was the case. But this year, I don't think there's too much of an excuse for you to go out and shell true money for a backup quarterback.
Yeah, I think they definitely need to go younger. Definitely note Sam Darnold. I would move on from him. I'm not paying $4 or $5 million for a backup quarterback. You could talk about bringing Brandon Allen back and maybe go get like an undrafted free agent, or maybe draft somebody in the later rounds. You never know. We got Brock Purdy last pick in the draft, and he's our starter now. So you never know who you can find, and hopefully they find a really good player that can at least back up Brock Purdy on that rookie salary. I think that would be a good situation for the 49ers. I think they have to approach it that way because of where their salary cap is right now. All right, let me ask you this, Miller. Who's your draft crush right now? You've been there for a day and a half. You're going to be there all weekend, and maybe you can't say this yet, but so far, based on what you've seen, who's your draft crush? Who do you want the 49ers to get?
Talking about certain players, I think that there are a lot of different who I personally believe could be intriguing. In terms of draft crushes, I do think it's early. Haven't done enough scouting to fully know necessarily who might be the guy. But if you're talking about standouts, guys that pop out, we mentioned a few of them: Braden Fisk, Chop Robinson. I think Byron Murphy had a good day yesterday, probably out of the 49ers range in the first round. But as in the 49ers realm, LSU's Mekhi Wingo. I haven't watched his film. Don't know how he looks on tape. A very, very intriguing player based on his footwork from yesterday. I think he has quick feet. I think he would be an intriguing candidate for sure. Linebacker-wise, though, there are a couple of intriguing linebackers. Jordan McGee out of Temple ran 4.55 at the combine. He's a guy who I've watched a little bit of. I think he could be an intriguing late-round guy. I think you're starting to see some of those potential late-round project 49ers like at linebacker to potentially serve as some of the depth pieces. Elsewhere, though, receiver, one guy who I actually really like in my short brief time watching his film was Brian Thomas, LSU receiver, projected in the first round. The reason I bring up his name, the San Francisco 49ers had a formal interview with Brian Thomas, a guy who I did not anticipate them to have a formal interview with, because I think he's going to be out of their range. spoke with him today. He said they had a formal interview. So he got to speak with Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch. He could be that complement to Brandon Ayuk that you might want. A 6'4", 215-pound outside receiver with speed. He's a deep threat. He can do a lot of things, and I think that he'd be a talented player. But overall, I think that once we get into the draft mode, I'm going to definitely develop some of these guys, develop crushes on some of these guys, because this is a deep, deep class, I think, with certain players that you're going to see at certain positions shine out. And I think those positions also relate to what the 49ers need, such as offensive tackle.
Yeah, and one thing I asked Steph Sanchez to do for me yesterday, because she did it last year, and I reminded her, I'm like, what's up with that list, which shows who the 49ers meet with officially? I believe they have 30 visits. Is that correct? Of people they can meet with officially. Like, they can meet with people, but an official meeting, they can only have 30.
Correct.
And she
tracked the top 30 visits.
Yes, and she tracked those top 30 visits from 2017 all the way through now under Kyle Shanahan, who they've had those official visits with versus who ended up signing on the team. And if you look at those top 30 visits, it seems like almost every time, every draft, at least 4 or 5 of the people that they draft, they were one of those people in those top 30 visits. So if you're curious about who the 49ers are going to draft, pay attention to who they're meeting with in those top 30 visits. And you can guarantee that out of those 30 people, at least 4 or 5 of them are going to be drafted by the 49ers. And what's even more crazy is it's even more of those players get signed after the draft. They don't get drafted. So, like, I think if you look at last year, I think they drafted 4 players that they met with in those top 30 visits. And then an additional 5 or 6 undrafted free agents came from those meetings. So if you're predicting who the 49ers are going to draft, pay attention to those meetings. 3 guys that they met with, which I find interesting: McCaffrey's brother, Jerry Rice, and Frank Gore's son. So a little bit of a nepotism thing going on here. What do you think the chances are that the 49ers get any one of those 3 players?
If you look at the 3 in their projected ranges, I think Brennan Rice might go the earliest, potentially projected in the 3rd round. I don't know if the Niners will truly like him. He's a little stiff. He's a bigger guy. If anything, he'd probably be a Jawan Jennings replacement. He seems a little stiff, though, as a bigger guy. Could be an intriguing receiver in the 3rd round. McCaffrey, somewhat of a Swiss Army knife. I mean, he's played quarterback. He can play running back. He can play receiver in a way. He has film on him. Would be intrigued to see what he can do, kind of. And then got to speak with Frank Gore's son a little bit. Gore, I mean, the connection is literally Frank Gore Sr. is in the 49ers scouting meetings. He was up in the booth with John Lynch, Tariq Ahmad, and RJ Gillen yesterday. I mean, he's in the meetings, so you could definitely see it. Of the 3, maybe I would say Luke or McCaffrey might be the more realistic one, just because of the needed receiver, the way that he's utilized that fits the 49ers system, and also the positional.
All right, man. Last question. I'm going to let you get out of here because I know you got a lot going on. You want to get back to the scouting combine. But I'm curious. There's 22 free agents that were on the 49ers last year, 22 of them. These are the players that I think provide value that the 49ers should consider bringing back. And I want to get your take. Out of those 22 players, I got Javon Kinlaw coming back. Tashawn Gibson, if he doesn't retire, I think is a good value. He'll be like $1.5–2 million maybe. Cleveland Farrell, John Feliciano, Juwan Jennings are looking at getting a long-term contract with right now, according to John Lynch. We'll see. Chris Conley will only cost you about $1 million. I think he provides good value on special teams and backup at the receiver position. I think guys like Ray McLeod don't make it because they just can't afford to bring guys like that back. But out of those players I named, Javon Kinlaw, Tashawn Gibson, Cleveland Farrell, John Feliciano, Juwan Jennings, and Chris Conley, how likely do you think it is they'll bring those guys back? Do you agree that they should?
I think that those are good players that you mentioned. I would personally bring back all of them. Now, likelihood, I think Kinlaw is the least likely of the bunch. And when I say least likely, I don't mean that it's absolutely out of the blue. I just think that there's 2 reasons. One, he might have priced himself out of San Francisco's range because of how much of a premium he is. And 2, if he is looking to cash in on a deal and take one deal elsewhere, I think he's going to look to start. And he's learned a lot from Mark Armstead. I think he also values the system, but his best way at getting his next payday is a starting job. The 49ers, unfortunately, can't offer that on a consistent basis. He'll likely start if he plays here at some point, given the injury history for the 49ers at the defensive tackle position. I don't think that he's going to want that. I think that he'd prefer another opportunity where he can be the full-time starter elsewhere. Yeah, guys, though, I mean, you talk about Chris Conley. He's a guy who excels on special teams. He's cheap value, and he's a speed guy. I mean, he's a guy who, if you think about it, what's his role gonna be? He's going to be on the scout team. That type of speed is going to be helpful. He plays well on special teams. Jennings, you definitely want to try and bring back, if not on a multi-year deal with a contract extension, at least on the tender. I'm expecting a second-round tender if they tender him.
There goes Rohan. That was me on my last show. Internet just went out. Hey, look, I just dropped the call-in link. So call in. It looks like people want Jim Everett to call in because he's been talking about here. Here's Rohan. He's back.
There we
What's
go.
up, baby?
My fault. But no, I mean, I was just saying, I think the remaining of the guys, it seems pretty likely they'll bring back. You're talking about Conley, you're talking about Juwan Jennings. I think Dylan Farrell would be a good addition. Feliciano, Niners said they want to bring him back. I think he'd be another good addition. Yeah, I'd agree with the rest of them.
Is there anyone I didn't mention that you would bring back that you can think of?
McLeod might be the only one, but again, it depends on what McLeod costs. I think the two guys who you mentioned that I could be brought back, or that you didn't mention that could be brought back, apart from, of course, Brandon Allen, would be what do you call it, Warren Burks and McLeod. I think those are the two guys where they like continuity, at the linebacker spot. I'd still place the likelihood at both of them being under 50%, but I think they like the continuity. If they can find cheap deals, it's essentially, do other teams want to pay him? If not, they can come back on a cheap deal, try and prove themselves again here in San Francisco before going elsewhere for a bigger opportunity.
Yes, sir. Hey, Rohan, man, you are the best at this stuff. I appreciate you, man. It's good to see you. It's been a minute. I'm glad to have you on. For all you guys, that if you want to call in, Jim, they say you're talking reckless, Jim Everett. So go ahead and call in if you want to. The link is in the chat. If you guys want to call in, now's your chance. I'm going to run a commercial. And if anyone calls in, we'll go ahead and move forward. Otherwise, we'll wrap the show up. But Rohan, man, great job. Tell everyone where they can find you, because honestly, like, you're good all year long, but this is like when you shine, really, honestly, during the draft, free agency, off-season stuff, you kill it. So how can people find you on your channel, Twitter, your articles, etc.?
I appreciate you as always, Ryan. I mean, it's always great just having a conversation with you. You always are authentic with your 49ers takes. For those of you that want to find me, my channel is my name, Rohan Chakravarthi, as you can see on the screen. I also write at Niners Nation. If you want article content, I write a good amount there. Put out my thoughts. Had a piece on the 49ers and potentially taking a corner. If you want my thoughts on top 5 of the corners in the class, that out yesterday. But do a lot of content there. Just enjoy everything, and definitely a lot from the scouting combine here. But as I said, Ryan, thank you so much for your time as well, and fun Friday morning.
Yes, sir, man. Enjoy your day. I think corner DBs, right? DBs are running 40s right now, probably. So I'm sure you want to check that out, man. Enjoy your day. Thanks as always, and we will see you soon for sure, brother.
100%.
Thank you very much. We'll be right back with a couple callers.
Most of you guys know I've been a mortgage lender and real estate broker for a long time, and I always deal with credit. And I get a lot of clients that need help with their credit, and I always send them to Blue Water Credit. Blue Water Credit is a sponsor of the show. They are the best credit repair company I've ever used, and I've been using them for a long time. In the description, there are details. Click that link, fill out the form, let them know Ryan G. Hensley sent you. They will run your credit for free, give you a free credit evaluation. They'll let you know what they can do for you, how much it costs, how long it's going to take, and they will take care of you the right way. This is a really good credit repair company. Credit is so important in this country. Make sure you handle your business. Reach out to Blue Water Credit.
All right, I got my guy TC. I'm going to pop on here in just a second. Give me 1 second, TC. Real quick, I want to get Dave Barclay's super chat. Says, Ryan and Rohan, love it up. Got that one already. Still can't figure out how to become a member. There is a link in the details in the description. Just after the show, you just click that link and you sign up, man. I think it's $2.99. Let me know if you have any questions. You could DM me, and I'll show you how to do it. Thank you for your support. As always, How about the cornerback out of Iowa? Which guy are we talking about, man? I got to dive in deeper. This is the first week I'm diving into college. I don't have a lot of time during the year to watch college football, so I tend to catch up starting now in March. So that's what I'm diving in. I'm going to go look at all the combine stuff. So let me know his name. I know my guy Melvin was talking about the white corner. That was Grant's pick at 34. Everyone wants a white corner. That's a unicorn. So we'll see if that actually happens. But I got my guy TC backstage. TC, what's up, man? TC, you're on mute, brother. TC, are you there? All right, TC must have stepped away. All right, man. Nobody else wants to call in. TC's on mute. So I think I'm going to wrap this show up, man. I appreciate Rohan being here. Jim Everett, I'm sorry you didn't have the huevos to call in and talk, but maybe you'll build up the courage another day. All right, man. You guys are the best. I'll be back Monday with our guy, Eric Crocker. Until then, I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you so much for being here. Please hit that like button, subscribe button, and I'm out.
Thank you so much for watching the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Your support is greatly appreciated. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel. The Ryan G. Hensley Show is brought to you by Hensley Real Estate and Mortgage. I've been operating my real estate business in the state of California since 2009, and I would love to help your family. We are also sponsored by Hensley Solar. I can put solar on your house in up to 38 states. Underdog Fantasy is a sponsor of the channel. Please check out the details in the description to see how you can join Underdog Fantasy and get $100 matched in your initial deposit. And finally, I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, Blue Water Credit. They are the best credit repair company I've ever dealt with. If you want to fix your credit, reach out to Blue Water Credit. Details in the description for all of my sponsors. Again, thanks so much for watching. Hit that like button, subscribe if you're not, and turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Thanks a lot.